Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, dear friends. I'm very glad to welcome you on the 20th Economic Forum in St. Petersburg, and I'd like to begin by looking at that audience by remembering that the first mayor of this city, Anatoly Sobchak, was one of the founding fathers of this forum. And since then, more than 20 years have passed. The forum began as sort of a regional forum, although then we organized it with the help of the city administration, city authorities. But now the forum has turned into an important platform where we can meet, discuss the problems and exchange opinions. First of all, I'd like to thank the heads of the international organizations and leaders of the states, as well as authoritative politicians and business leaders who responded to our invitation and came here. The St. Petersburg Forum is a traditional platform of discussion of strategic issues and problems. The conversation of this kind is very important today when the world is undergoing serious transformation and deep changes are rooted in all the areas of life. I'd like to use this rostrum to share my ideas on Russia in the changing world. I'd like to begin with the systemic problems which global economy is facing, and almost all the countries. After the crisis of 2008 and 2009, we have managed partially to level up our financial balances and limit, although not overcome, the debt growth and make money flows more transparent and manageable. However, structural problems accumulated in the global economy still remain. To relaunch the growth is not yet an achievement. By the way, the economic uncertainty and the depletion of the former sources of growth are the root causes of the current geopolitical tensions, and there is a risk that the tensions can be going up and even provoked artificially. So it is in our common interest to find a constructive way out of this situation. The leading countries of the world are looking for the sources of growth in capitalizing the huge technological potential which exists already and continues to be formed or developed. Most of all, they are looking for that in the digital and industrial technologies, robot construction, energy, biotechnologies and medicine, and in other areas. The discoveries in these areas can lead us to a real technological revolution, to an outburst of labor efficiency. It is already happening, and it will inevitably happen. I'm speaking about the restructurization of the whole areas and industries. Many industries and assets will be devalued, and the demand on jobs, professions, and competencies will change, and the competition will be aggravated on the traditional and the developing markets or emerging markets. We are witnessing today the attempts to monopolize the benefits from the technologies of the new generation. And this, I believe, leads to creation of closed regulatory areas with barriers of the technology flows into the other regions of the world, with strict control over the cooperation chains in order to gain the maximum technological advantage. We have been in discussions with my colleagues, and some of them say that it is possible, but I think that this forecast is not possible. Technologies may be sustained for some time, but they cannot be limited into a closed space, even if it is a huge geographical area. The attempts I've been speaking about could lead to the fact that the fundamental sciences, which are now open for exchange of knowledge and information and for joint projects, could be closed up with dividing barriers growing. Still, the scale of technological and economic tasks, as well as the objective situation today, are of such scale that we see that we can only develop efficiently together with cooperation ties. We believe that cooperation of this kind can be effectively built within flexible and open integration structures which promote competition in scientific research and multiplicity of technological solutions, and also allow the member states to fully implement their potential and their competencies. In 2011, together with Belarus and Kazakhstan, and based on the close network of cooperation links which we inherited from the Soviet Union, we formed the single customs space. Then we created the Eurasian Economic Union. The founders of this project are present here on the rostrum. That is the President of Kazakhstan, Mr. Nazarbayev. We are deepening our integration. We are lifting barriers which stand in the way of developing trade, investments, technologies, and workforce movements. We are implementing the programs of scientific and technological cooperation, and we are creating a single service market. By 2025, the single energy and hydrocarbon market and financial markets will be created. We see a huge future in interaction of Eurasian Economic Union with other countries and integration organizations. By the way, the desire to create the free trade area with the Eurasian Economic Union has been expressed by about 40 states and international organizations. We believe, with our partners, that the Eurasian Economic Union might become one of the centers of a broader integration contour. Within this contour, we will be able to solve large technological tasks, motivate and involve new participants into the technological development process. Recently in Astana, we discussed this, and we believe and propose to create a greater Eurasian partnership with the participation of the Eurasian Economic Union and those countries with which we have close relations already: China, India, Pakistan, Iran, and our CIS partners, as well as other interested states and organizations. We could begin with simplifying and unification of regulations in branch cooperation and investments, as well as non-tariff measures of technical and phytosanitary regulation and customs administration, as well as protection of the intellectual property rights. And then we could move on to lowering and cancelling the tariff barriers. We could be based on a whole network of bilateral and multilateral trade agreements with the different depth, speed and level of interaction, with different openness of markets depending on the readiness of this or that national economy to such cooperation. The arrangements about joint projects in high-tech education and science should be the basis of our road to future and should create the basis for our joint development on the basis of equal cooperation. In June, with our Chinese colleagues, we are planning to officially launch the negotiations to create the comprehensive trade and economic partnership in Eurasia with the participation of the states of the Eurasian Economic Union and China. I expect this to become one of the first steps of creating the greater Eurasian partnership, and we will come back to discussing this large-scale project at the Eastern Economic Summit, which will be held at in early September in Vladivostok, and I'd like to use this occasion to invite all of you there. This project of Greater Eurasia is, of course, open for Europe as well, and this cooperation, I believe, could be mutually beneficial. The European Union, despite all the issues in our relations, which we know about, remains the key trade and economic partner of Russia. It is our closest neighbor. And of course, we do care about what is happening in our neighboring European states and our neighboring European economy. For the EU, the challenge of the technological revolution and structural changes is as grave as for Russia. I understand well our European partners who keep talking about difficult decisions for Europe during the negotiations to create the TTIP, Transatlantic Partnership. It is evident that Europe has huge potential, and focus on one regional organization narrows its opportunities. In this situation, it would be difficult to keep the balance and have the space for maneuver, which would be beneficial for Europe. As my recent meetings with the representatives of German and French business circles showed, the European business wants and is ready to cooperate with our country. The politicians must agree to that and show wisdom, manifest wisdom and foresight. We should return confidence to Russian-European relations and revive or resume the level of our cooperation. We remember how it all started. Russia did not initiate the current downfall of relations and current issues. Russia did not impose sanctions first. All our actions were and remain only reciprocal. But we, as we say in Russia, do not hold grudge against anyone, and we are ready to come forward to our European partners, but this cannot be the road with one way. We are interested for the Europeans to join the project of the Greater Eurasian Partnership, and in this regard we welcome the initiative of the President of Kazakhstan to hold consultations between the Eurasian Economic Union and the EU. And yesterday we discussed this issue at my meeting with the President of the European Commission. Besides, as the first step, we might resume the technical dialogue between our experts on a broad range of matters like trade, investments, technical regulation, customs administration. Thus, we would be able to develop the basis for further cooperation. And of course, we believe it important to continue cooperation on large-scale scientific projects like the laser on free electrons and the thermal reactor ETAP, and a number of others, which will allow us to be more competitive both in Europe and in Russia. It is enough to say that in 2015, Russia invested €1,200,000,000 in the joint high-tech projects with Europe. Distinguished colleagues, while developing the strategy of the economic development of Russia, we are taking account into the global trends, and we are aimed at using the global technological shifts and the formation of new markets, as well as the opportunities for integration and cooperation for our own development. Russia was able to solve the most topical problems in its economy, and in near future we expect to have the resumption of our growth. We have maintained the reserves, we have limited the outflow of capital, and it is five-fold lower than at the first quarter of 2015. The inflation also goes down. If we take the last period month by month, then we see that, for example, between 2014 and 2015, the figure of inflation was almost double as of now between 2015 and 2016. I believe that the inflation level of 4 and 5% is achievable in mid-term. Besides, we must lower the budget deficit and the dependence of the budget on the hydrocarbons and other raw materials. Includingly, in the next 5 or 7 years, we must at least move down the oil and gas deficit by twofold. I'm confident that the government and the Central Bank of Russia will continue their responsible work on ensuring macroeconomic stability. We are aimed at achieving the 4% of growth of economy per year. I remember what we said last years, of course. Now the figures are more modest. These are not as high goals as we set a few years ago. But the situation, I repeat, has changed not only for Russia, but for all the global economy. The current slowdown is the global trend. A very important factor which determines the competitiveness of economy and the dynamics of markets, as well as the GDP growth and increase in the real salaries, is the labor efficiency. We must achieve the labor efficiency growth on large and middle enterprises in industry, construction, transport, and agriculture. The growth should be no less than 5% per year. It seems to be a very difficult task if we look at the situation today, but still, the examples of many enterprises and whole industries, such as air industry, chemical industry, pharmaceuticals, agriculture, show that this figure, this task, is very real and achievable. We will calibrate our legislation and tax regulators as well as technical standards so that the companies would be interested in raising labor efficiency and implementing labor and energy saving technologies. And the enterprises which are ready and want to solve such tasks should receive broad access to financial resources, including through development institutions such as the Vneshekonom Bank and the Industry Development Fund. The growth of labor efficiency will lead to the downfall of non-efficient labor, which means that we'll have to raise the flexibility of labor market and to propose new opportunities to people. We will be able to solve this task, first of all, by creating new jobs in SMEs. The number of employees, which is very important, the number of employees in SMEs must grow from the current 18 million people by at least 1.4 million people by 2020 and by more than 3 million by 2025. Of course, it would be not very easy to increase the support of SMEs, and I believe that create the whole niches for their work would be even more difficult, but we must do that. We've made an important step in this direction. We've received first results. For example, the volume of orders for SMEs from large companies with the public participation, state participation, has increased. As of year end, which I believe is the success of the government, as of year end, the large companies will place 1 trillion ruble orders for SMEs, which is the growth of more than 9-fold. Another niche for SMEs is the high-tech area. We must create the conditions for those small companies which are implementing startups and enter the market with breakthrough products. And of course, a very good niche is service and household services. In order to create a comfortable and favorable life conditions for people in cities, towns, and villages. This June, the Cooperation on the Development of Small and Middle Business launches the free e-service, which is called Business Navigator, which will have the information on in what region there are promising platforms to open one's own business, which products and services are in demand, and which financial and property support an entrepreneur can get. The government has already begun the work to assist the export. We have created the Russian Export Center, but we must move forward basing on the available results. We must develop the system of support of export-oriented companies. It must cover all the cycle from R&D and pre-export financing to the assistance in certification, marketing, and service maintenance, as well as the companies entering to the external markets. I'll add that our import substitution programs are aimed at creating the world competitive products. And in this regard, I'd like to highlight the import substitution is an important stage for increasing the non-resource export and to building our companies into the global manufacturing and technological alliances, and not just on the second pass on the background, but as the strong and efficient partners. Ladies and gentlemen, we'll continue further liberalization and improvement of the business climate. I know that it has been talked a lot about at the forum yesterday and today, and we are going to solve the systematic problems We are speaking about raising transparency, leveling up the relations of state and business. The relations must be built on the understanding of the mutual responsibility and the full compliance with law, on the respect of the interests of state and society and the unconditioned value of the private property. We must drastically lower the opportunities for illegal criminal prosecution. Moreover, the representatives of law enforcement agencies should be personally liable for unjustified actions which led to the disruption of other people's business. This liability could be up to criminal liability. I understand that is a very fine thing. We could not and we must not bind hand and foot. Bind our law enforcement bodies hand and foot, but we must keep the balance here. We must put clear barriers for any abuse of mandates, powers, or laws. The leaders of Prosecutor's Office, Investigations Committee, Ministry of Interior, and the FSB must monitor the situation on places and, if necessary, take measures to upgrade and update the legislation. I would ask the working group on the application of law in entrepreneurship, headed by the head of the administration of the President Sergei Ivanov, to concentrate on these matters. I'd add that there has been already the package of draft laws introduced to the Parliament and prepared by this working group, which are aimed at humanizing the so-called economic articles. We must ensure the right of the business and all the citizens on just and unbiased judicial protection. The domestic judicial community has done a lot recently in order to improve the quality of justice. The positive role in the application of law was played by the Union of Supreme and the Arbitration Courts. I believe that we must move forward in raising the responsibility of the judges and ensuring the better transparency of court proceedings. An important role in creating favorable conditions for business lays within the regions. This morning, I don't know whether it was I know that it was discussed on the platforms of this forum. This morning, the results of the annual national rating of investment climate were announced, and I congratulate the winners. That is the Republic of Tatarstan, Belgorod and Kaluga regions, and I'd also note the significant progress of the Tula, Vladimir, Tyumen, Kirov, Lipetsk, and Orlov regions, as well as the city of Moscow in this regard. But I'd like to draw your attention to one thing. The results show that we have the core of leaders which are traditionally high in the ratings. And there is a question, where are the rest? So I would ask the government, together with the business communities, to think about additional mechanisms of promoting the best regional management teams. And on the contrary, we'll make some staff or HR decisions towards those heads of regions who do not understand that business support is an important resource of developing the regions and all the country. I'd like to be heard by my colleagues in the regions. First of all, the heads of those regions. We will seriously analyze the situation in every region of Russia, and this autumn we will have the serious conversation on this topic. Ladies and gentlemen, I've mentioned the participation of Russia in the international scientific cooperation, in particular with the countries of Europe. I must add to that our serious fundamental basis in physics, mathematics, and chemistry. Recently, we honored the scientists, the winners of the State Prize, who made the real breakthrough in biology, genetics, and medicine. I'll add that these were the Russian microbiologists who developed the most efficient vaccine against the Ebola fever. The domestic companies are now preparing the whole line of unmanned transport vehicles to enter the market. They are working on the systems of distribution and accumulation of energy, on digital sea navigation systems. We have almost formed the system of governing or managing the technological development. First, The recently created Agency on Technological Development will assist the introduction of the existing advanced developments, advanced technologies into the real manufacturing and assist the founding of the joint ventures with the foreign partners. Second, since 2019, we will have another mechanism for large enterprises. It will be legally binding to use the best available technologies which correspond with the strictest environmental standards. I believe it would be a serious incentive to modernize the industry. Such norms are already introduced in most of our neighboring states. We have moved forward those time limits, taking into account the difficult situation in the real economy, but we can't move those time frames into future for eternity. Our business colleagues and industry colleagues know about that, and they should be ready to this. And the third, within the National Technological Initiative, we are already working on the projects of tomorrow, on the technologies that will create completely new markets in 10 or 20 years. And I'd like to ask the government to be quicker about lifting administrative, legal and other barriers which stand in the way of the development of the markets of the future. It is very important to reinforce the technological development with financial resources. That is why the key task of the renewed Vneshekonombank would become the support of long-term, commercially attractive projects in this high-tech area. And we do understand that technologies are created and used by people. The talent of a researcher, the expertise of engineers and workers are a most important condition of competitiveness of economy in the country as a whole. That is why I believe the education is the most important thing which we should concentrate on in the forthcoming years. Currently, we are witnessing the real revival of the interest within our young people to designing and engineering professions and natural sciences. By the way, Russia is already the leading country in the world in number of students who study the design and engineering professions. It is very important that at the same time the quality of staff training is improving and the links of universities and colleges with the real economy are reinforced, both with state and private sectors, which means higher demand for experts. We will continue to upgrade the material base of educational institutions. We will continue to implement the teacher training programs. And of course, together with the employers, we will modernize the very content of higher and vocational education, basing on the modern, renewed, updated professional standards. We will also actively use the experience received in our mutual work with the World Skills International Movement. Beginning with secondary and supplementary education, we will create the conditions for children in all the regions of the country to be able to implement technical and scientific projects, and that the children would get used to team and creative work since childhood. These are the skills which any expert in any sphere needs today. Ladies and gentlemen, it is understandable that the new model of growth needs new approaches to managing the development, and here we are basing on the project principle. In the near future, we'll create the Presidential Council on Strategic Development and Priority Projects, and your humble servant will head this council, whereas the panel of the council would be headed by the chairman of the government of the Russian Federation, Dmitry Medvedev. The council will deal with the key projects aimed at structural changes in economy and social area and at increasing the growth rates, including the projects mentioned by me today, raising the labor efficiency, business climate, and assistance to small and middle business, as well as export support and a number of other projects. These projects go through, that is, they touch upon different areas of economy and social area, and they are far beyond the competence of just one agency and need active participation of regions and municipal authorities. At the same time, in state social programs such as healthcare, education and housing, there will be the project part singled out with the clear description of the results that we are planning to achieve by 2020-2025, and with a clear description of by what measures these results will be achieved. By the middle of the next decade, distinguished friends, the world will change completely. And to ignore such processes, turn the blind eye to them, means to go on the margins of development. And in order to be leaders in this process, we must form the changes ourselves. St. Petersburg is now hosting the guests of the International Economic Forum for the 20th time already. For these years, Russia has gone through the huge wave, and it demonstrated its ability to respond to the current challenges and even be ahead of them by maintaining our uniqueness and spiritual roots, which is very important. We are confident when we look into the future, and we link our future and our success with our openness for the world, with broad cooperation for the interests of development. I'm confident, distinguished colleagues and friends, ladies and gentlemen, that you share this approach. And of course, we highly evaluate it, and we invite you to have our joint work. Thank you for your attention.